in the narrative backstory of Tor, we see the Republic more or less dominated by the Sith. Despite the fact that wars are not usually fought this way, you know, they're not normally this one-sided. They tend to have a series of attacks, defenses, counterattacks, and whatnot. With the single exception of possibly the smuggler breaking the blockade, but of course, you know, that wasn't truly a Republic action. When Alderaan was released, we were told that House Organa sided with the Republic and House Thul sided with the Sith, and we were given the setup of that House Thul has all this power, they're coming in, and House Organa is, quote, just barely holding on. My question is actually pretty interesting on this one, I thought. I don't mind that. I don't mind that, actually. My question on this is, are we going to see the reverse ever? Are we going to have a chance to see maybe a world where, like, the Sith are barely holding on, and the Republic is just coming in and hammering back?
So, what I can say is, you can't confuse marketing for the entire game content, right?
Obviously.
And, you know, it's funny because, I mean, to sort of take this and run with it, right? There's been a lot of talk about the Jedi Knight class. And,
oh, yeah,
you know, and it's like,
the trailer was great. Honestly, you won me back with the trailer, man.
But there's been a lot of talk, and it was funny. I was talking to Hall, and I said, the thing about, for example, the Jedi Knight is it's probably the most iconic character in Star Wars, right? And the story's been told in various forms a lot of times, and we're trying to find a fresh angle on it, so it was the hardest one to write. So one of the reasons you don't see any of the Jedi updates, you don't see all this stuff, was honestly because we were still working on it. Because Hall and I, both senior writers, we were both hammering on this thing, trying to make it awesome. And so it was funny because we'd see it and it's like, you know, nobody cares about the Jedi, and we're not necessarily, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. I know, no,
but,
it's fine.
You know, and we were just like, seriously, you know, Hall's there like 1 in the morning. He's like, seriously? Seriously?
Oh, I feel horrible now. I feel terrible.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think that the thing you have to remember is before the Empire showed up, before the Sith showed up, the Republic was the only game in town, right? They were used to being, I mean, you can't even call them a superpower because there really was no other power. They were just it. So,
and they had Jedi.
Anything that changes the status quo for them is going to be stunning and shocking, and they're going to feel like, wow, this is like, we are getting our asses kicked. Even in a standoff, they're like, well, we lost half of everything.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's completely even. So I think you're getting a little bit of that perspective too. It's like the people who had nothing have more than they had. The people who had everything have less than they had. So even if they're even now, or even if the Republic's slightly ahead, they feel like they're behind.
Oh yeah.
So you're definitely going to see, once the game comes out, you're going to see both sides of the equation.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, like I said, it was something that we were wondering, we were talking about was, you know, is there going to be a situation where, like I said, you know, there might be like a Sith world, like the Sith really want to hold it, and the Republic's going, oh, we want this place, and you're going to have the Sith being kind of pushed back and struggling.
There's definitely through the arc, the story arc of the game, so every character has their own arcs, but then you have an overall arc for the game, right? There's definitely an arc that shows this you know, transition for both sides, but I mean the Republic definitely is. I mean, anytime you have something where it's set up where it's like they can't, you know, they're overwhelmed, they can't fight back. You know, the point is at some point they're gonna fight back, right? And shift the pendulum the other way, and get it to a situation where, you know, like I said, it works both ways. The Sith had nothing, now they have more, and then they have more than the Republic. Then if the Republic starts to even it out, now the Sith feel like, wow, we're losing everything, right? So
yeah, I mean, the question is, I'm sorry, I'm not meaning, I'm really not trying to. The question on this though is, I mean, the reason why I'm asking, and I'm trying to support, see, I'm in a unique position, and I got to say this exactly, is because I do have a lot of game design experience in my background, and so the problem is, I'm on one level, you've got me who does know, or doesn't necessarily know what's going on, but has an idea, because I've done this kind of stuff. And then you've got the Professor Walsh persona, which yes, it's a persona. You've got the Professor Walsh persona who is more or less, he is the representative of the guy who is trying to come into this and saying, well, I am reacting to only what I am seeing.
Right.
And so without assuming things, like in this case, my concern, and I think a concern of a lot of Republic players at this point, is that, you know, since it's an MMO, it's not really going to end. And then we had a comment that was made, I think it was last week, I could be wrong, where it was stated that was it James Allhan? I can't remember who, but made the comment that the status quo had to be upheld because someone asked, like, could planets change hands? And they were like, well, the status quo has to be upheld, and that's kind of a worrying thought. So if the status quo has to be upheld, how are we going to be able to have this kind of transition?
So the thing is, on a given world, right? We've set it up. You can't, obviously, as we said, we can't change the world. What James was saying is, you can't change it because then other players coming in won't get to experience the world story of the arc. But what we do have is the overall arc of the game, which is different for players. I'm trying to think how. I mean, there's things I'm allowed to say, things I'm not.
Right,
so
I understand.
I'm trying to dance around this, but you have this overall arc where, for example, you might go to somewhere and it would be in a situation, and then you go back later and the situation is different, but you know. In the fiction, it's the same world, right?
Right.
But mechanically, it wouldn't be the same world for us. Like on your map, it might look like the same world, but we've sent you back at a different point in the arc of the story, and maybe things are different.
So, I mean, just to clarify that, to make sure I understand what's going on, what you're saying is basically I'm not going to say it's phasing, because that's not the same thing, but are we looking at something similar to, like, staged instances where, like, once you reach a certain point in your story, anytime you go to this world, you're now in, like, a different iteration of this world, like a different instance or something? I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm just kind of confused.
Exactly. I mean, you're kind of in the right, like, I have to be really careful what I say.
Right, I understand.
But, yeah, there's things we can do, you know, behind the scenes and things like that, you know. For example, yeah, like instances specific to characters are certain ways. I mean, that's not obviously not something you want to do on a planet-wide scale. Right. But there are things that we can do, and I mean, so yeah, there are things we can do.
You're saying we will see the war effort advance.
Yes, you definitely. Both the Imperial and Republic story arcs have a very steady progression of the, you know, well, I mean, it's technically not a war when it starts, but there's a progression of this galactic struggle, for want of a better term, that definitely does progress in ways that make an actual difference in, you know, what's going on as you progress the story, right? Now, it's not going to change the world for someone who's at a different point in the story because they haven't played the story.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense?
You will personally see changes, but he won't see the same changes at the same time because he hasn't gone through it yet.
Are they even, I mean, are you going to actually be in the same iteration? That's something that's now...
So that's the thing where, yeah, you can't, I mean... Yeah, you can't really, I mean, realistically, you can't have players in the same iteration if it's like that. Now, not every world is like this. Some worlds are more static than others. Okay. Right? You know, so I have to be really careful. So, yeah, I really don't want to say too much. So,
Okay, so, I mean, basically what this is about is, I've always used, if you've seen anything, I really apologize. I hope I haven't hurt your feelings. I know. We, honestly, anytime, I never wrote, like, novels like you did. I did write comic books for a while, and I can tell you comic book fans are rabid. You can't say anything without getting torn apart. So, in this case, pretty much, which I'm worried this isn't going to pick up, but one of the things that I'm concerned with, or not concerned with, one of the things I want to clarify, so what I was concerned with, I think what a lot of people were, and now that this new information has come forward, this is like groundbreaking, because this isn't close, we've gotten to this, but...
Yeah, see this thing, I don't want to get in trouble, I can't be breaking ground.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people were concerned with is, like, I always used to use the Karate Kid analogy. Okay. The Karate Kid analogy works like this. You remember the original Karate Kid, the old one, Ralph Macchio, right? Okay. Basically, what you've got is you open up, and you've got Ralph Macchio, and you've got Daniel-san. He is the Republic. And then you've got the Cobra Kai Dojo. Right. They're the Sith. Right. Ralph Macchio comes in, he gets beaten down over and over again. Finally, Mr. Miyagi steps in. He's our treaty Coruscant. Okay. And he buys Daniel-san time to train and recover and all this other stuff. And then the concern that I and a lot of people had, which it seems you've said, we don't have to be concerned about this. What you're saying, we don't need to be concerned about this, has been that I'm like, you know, because it's an MMO and we can't can't really advance the story because then it would end, is we're not going to have to worry about being currently always stuck in the training beat, and we're going to be able to actually see that end. We're going to get to see the tournament.
We'll get the satisfaction of the tournament. I mean, that
you have made me a happy nerd.
See, I can talk in analogies. Analogies are good.
I figured.
You will get the satisfaction of the tournament.
Excellent. Okay. My next.
That's a good way to put it.
I tried to word it in a way that wouldn't get you in trouble there. So this is the next one. This will be my last one because I know you're busy and they have been announcing this. In the January 10th issue of PC Gamer, it wasn't you that said this, but it was said that the Sith Inquisitor was the quote most dark, whereas the Bounty Hunter was the quote least dark. Those are exact quotes from page like 45 and 46.
Okay.
This indicated that they were kind of like relative benchmarks in the light side, dark side morality kind of slant.
So here's what I'm going to say. When you have 300 people working on a game, talking to the media for 4 years, and you say roughly 10 million words, a lot of what you say isn't accurate.
Right. Well,
I mean, it's all great to quote us, but I mean, honestly, there's a lot of stuff. One thing's changed, so that's part of it, right? And that's why we're so cagey about our answers, because you say something and then you're like, well, that's changed. And
it's like,
but you said, you know.
Yeah, 8 months ago you made a comment.
So I mean, that's part of it. The other thing is, you know, a lot of. I don't know who said it, and I don't know what the context was.
I think it was James Olhan, but I couldn't.
A lot of it is sort of impression or personal. You know, here's how I see things. Right. Right. So I don't know. I wouldn't put the characters on a. You know, I wouldn't put them on a spectrum of light and dark in that regard. Like, I mean, the Sith, you know, are starting from a starting point of, you know, this is a philosophy we believe, right? You should accept this philosophy. That's kind of where they start. Whereas the Bounty Hunter is more sort of starting from a philosophy of like, I'm on my own. I do what I want, right? So maybe that's where he's coming from. I'm not sure.
Okay. But yeah. I mean, because one of the big debates, and part of my whole role here coming along was to try to put to rest foreign debate. So far, we've killed one completely, thanks to Hall, Mr. Hall. We just one is dead. We have officially killed the whole average Jedi thing. It's done, over, gone. Okay. In this case, though, one of the big things has always been like with the Sith. When we think of a light Sith. Okay, when I think of a light Sith, I always think of someone like Darth Malgus. He's more or less honorable. He's still not a nice guy because he's a Sith and he believes in personal power and this, that, and that.
Here's the thing. If you choose to play an Imperial faction, for example, you are always going to be part of that faction. You're not going to be switching factions. We're not allowing that. And if you are, for example, a Sith, right, you are basically, you're a Sith and your goal is, you know, I want to advance myself to a more powerful position. Right. Now, how you go about doing that is where the light side, dark side comes in, right? It doesn't mean if you play Sith and light side, I mean, I'm going to be flat out honest. You don't get to redeem yourself and go join the Jedi. That's not what it's about, right? Right. It's about thinking you have a better chance of advancing yourself through, for example, you know, instead of maybe killing someone who is weaker than you, realizing that they could be an ally down the road, right? You know, like that's the kinds of things you might do.
So, I mean, just out of your own personal opinion on this, because this is getting, now that we're getting into some relatives, in your personal opinion, so pretty much, even though you might go as light side as you can, you're still at the core a believer in that Sith philosophy of me first, others second, and I am still probably not a nice guy.
Yes, because I mean the thing is, that's what you're getting into when you play that class, right? You know, there's always going to be certain core things that apply to your class, and from, you know, once you get, you know, we want people to have a sense of what these are before they play the class. Right. And, you know, it's going to be, yes, the Sith are about power and advancing themselves and, you know, doing it through various means that other people don't always approve of.
I got you.
And you're pretty much always going to be in that role as a Sith.
That's what I want to know, because it's one of the big debates. Like, people were like, well, if I do a light Sith, I'm going to be as light as a pure, stock Jedi Knight.
Yeah, and it's just not, I mean, mean, the situations you're in don't even allow for that. Like the way the story progresses,
right?
You know, you can't. Like, if you were going to do that, you essentially have to, right off the bat, try to save every poor soul on Korriban, and you would just get wiped out. Like, it just doesn't allow for that.
Gotcha. Well, last question then, because that was my really last planned one. Can we bury the hatchet?
Sure.
Come on, get a stand up, please, if you can. We have made up. We do not hate each other. They are not going to execute me as soon as I walk out of here. Though I see two kind of shifty-looking guys there. They're probably gonna Imperial shank me on the exit. I'm just kidding. All right, man. I appreciate it. I really do.